So, good evening and welcome to Real Talk, where every Sunday night we offer insight, education, and resources to in-home caregivers and those that are affected in their world. This is the children, the parents, their extended family, and everyone who loves them. And our goal is to offer real-life topics and learning through discussing these real issues and offering real solutions. Tonight, I am very excited to welcome back somebody who's been a guest with us before and who you all love hearing from. And that is Sue Downey. So welcome, Sue. It's good to have you here.
It's good to be back, as always.
Absolutely. We love having you. So Sue is a professional nanny and has been for probably almost as long as I have, maybe longer, I'm not sure.
I lose track.
Yes, we've both been around for a while. And tonight we're going to talk about something that I think kind of gets overlooked a little bit in our industry in terms of its level of importance. And so when this was something that you brought up as a potential topic, I just jumped on it right away. And I think you guys are all going to find this fascinating. And so we're going to ask Sue to share with us tonight a bit about play, which seems like such a simple thing. It's something kids do naturally, and yet we oftentimes kind of overlook the value that that brings to life. And frankly, most of us as adults could stand to do a little bit more of it, right? So I want to jump into that. But before we kind of jump into that, Sue, why don't you give us a little insight? How are you holding up with being a nanny in a pandemic with kids at home and in school? Share with us.
Well, yeah. So this was a much easier year because I have a kindergartner and a fourth grader, and so they'll both be in school all day long, gone, and going to be a little bit of household management, but kind of an easier year. And instead, we're virtual schooling. And fourth grader, she's great. It's not so hard. It's just a little support for her. She's pretty great. But kindergarten boy, virtual learning has been just a little bit of a treat. So we're hanging in there, but it's not easy because it's just the antithesis of everything that kindergarten's supposed to be. Plus two parents working from home part of the time, and we get along really well. And it's a big house, but you'll be surprised at how fast the space gets smaller when you have 5 people on computers needing, workspace. But it's been okay. And luckily I've been healthy. And so that's really all that you can ask for. And it's, it also has its blessings in that another year that I get, snuggles in the middle of the day and, to spend time with them.
Right. Yeah. Those are the best benefits of this kind of work, aren't they?
Exactly. It keeps me sane for sure.
It does. And I was just, a nanny friend actually posted an article today about the lack of hugs and how that is actually impacting all of us psychologically. So the fact that nannies in particular still get to have those, that's a big deal. My kids are teenagers. They're just like, they don't want to be, yeah, I need another baby. But anyway, that won't be happening. So tonight we're going to talk about play and its importance and its role in childhood and life. And so I want you to share with us first kind of why is play such a crucial component of our lives?
Well, it's more crucial now than ever before, which is one of the reasons why I suggested it as a topic, because I think that its ability to help us make sense of the world is you can't state that enough. Like, it really, especially for kids, the play that they do not only helps them learn, it helps their brains file information in ways that make sense. It not only helps us process emotions for kids and for adults, hence our need to have paint nights and games over Zoom, even though we can't be in the same spaces. We're still looking for ways to play because it offloads a lot of stress and everything else. But it also like chemically releases happy things into your brain. Like it releases serotonin. It can make you feel better in a way that not a lot of other things sometimes can get through to you. And so I think that it right now, just the stress relief of it is, but also the learning, also the connection, also the emotional stuff. It really is the work of the child, but also the savior of the adult in many, many ways. And so we don't think about it as much as I feel like we need to right now. Mm-hmm. So I've been doing a lot of reading and studying about play in the last 6 months, just because it made my heart sad when here goes my kindergartner and it's like worksheet, worksheet, worksheet. And all of these parents, oh, they're going to fall behind. And the school boards, how are we going to keep up with all of this stuff? And really, we should just be playing. Like that's what we can do. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's, particularly hard as a parent of a high schooler, because there's not that, well, they'll catch up. It's, sorry, you got the SATs and the ACTs coming up, and there isn't a catch up. No, this is life, and it's so important. So I love that there's an awareness building around this, and I've heard more people talking about it. In particular, there's a type of play that you and I both know is important, but a lot of times I think people overlook it, particularly if they're very structured people, and that's free play. So let's talk about that for a minute. Kind of tell us what that is, how it falls into the category, why it's important, whatever you want to share about it.
Sure. So it's pretty easy to think of it if you think about even like the ages. So you have kids who are teenagers. Generally, a lot of their play might be on team sports, right? So that's a structured activity. It has rules. It has a way of doing everything that's consistent and whatever. And that's a great kind of play. I think that's probably where teenagers are missing play a lot right now, is in that arena, those organized sports, which are so good for helping them with their social emotional development and making connections and leadership skills. So that's an important kind of play. But especially when we're talking about younger kids, we're talking about free play, which doesn't have necessarily a purpose. There's not necessarily rules, although sometimes kids will insert their own rules into that. It's what you might call free time or child-initiated play. It's the kind of play that for an infant could be just holding their hand in front of them and moving it in funny ways that feels weird. For a toddler, it could be dumping blocks over and then building and dumping the blocks over. For a preschooler, it's imaginary play, right? Where like they're the princess and they're conquering dragons and running around. And so it's important that, and we can talk about like, so there's child-led play, which is where the child sort of directs it. There's a child-initiated play, which is slightly different in that child-led play might be an adult starting a project and giving them a direction or placing materials out for them to do, but then the child takes over. Child-initiated is the kid comes up with the whole thing by themselves. And they can morph into each other and everything. And then there's like adult-initiated sort of play, like we're going to, follow these rules or play this game, Simon Says, whatever. And you need all the different kinds. But you definitely need free play. And I think that's where a lot of adults who haven't studied it are missing out on it, because they feel like all play has to have some purpose. Like you have to be learning something, and really you're learning something even if there isn't a purpose that's stated. Like that, letting a kid get bored and come up with the game by themselves, is the best gift that you can give kids a lot of times, especially if they're a kindergartner who's forced to do worksheets all day long, because that's how it works in the world today.
Mhm.
So that was a long answer to a simple question, but yeah.
No, sometimes those long explanations are helpful. And the thing I kept visualizing while you were talking about this is even I think we as a culture have tried to narrow down kids' play. I don't know about when you were growing up, because I'm not sure how much younger you are than me, but when I was growing up, Legos didn't come in a Battlestar Galactica kit.
Exactly.
Legos came in a big giant thing, you dumped it out, and you had to come up with your own thing. You had to make it up and invent it. And then that virtually disappeared.
Right.
And it was, here's a kit to build this Jeep, and here's one to build this boat, and here's one to build this princess. And they even incorporated, well, you're watching this on TV and now it's a Lego. And it's only been this year that I saw the kits. They're just big things of Legos with no purpose except to use your imagination. And so that's what I kept visualizing when you're talking about that. And I don't know about you, but I still like Legos.
No, we do too. And I won't keep the sets together at our house.
Mhm.
So they get really frustrated with me because they build them, and then once that time period has elapsed, then we'll keep the booklets in case they want to dig through and find all the pieces. But all of our Legos go in big bins. And so then it forces them to, but yeah, it's things like that. I mean, I think that, it's hard because there's a lot of pressure for us to be ready for kindergarten, be ready for middle school, be ready, and there's tests, and I'm worried that my kid's not reading at 4, and like all this pressure. But there's plenty of time for those milestones, and they will come. It's the ability for us to let kids play and force them to get these sort of other skills that aren't necessarily easily defined by a test. But those are the skills that if you sit down and write what you want your child to be as an adult, the skills that you're going to write are going to mostly come from the ability to play. You want to raise leaders. Well, the only way to learn how to be a leader is to play and figure out with groups of kids how you can become a leader, what communication skills you need, like all of those things. You want them to be independent. You want them to be creative. A lot of this comes from play, and from some unstructured play or child initiated play.
Yep. And problem solving skills.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think that's probably one of the greatest gifts that adults can give to children is problem solving skills.
Right.
Have the opportunity to develop those. So if we're looking at all this kind of stuff, and granted, our audience is broader than this, but the reality is most of our audience are nannies or they're newborn care specialists. So what is their role in all of this? Where does this all come together for them?
So this is a little complicated, because if somebody is paying you to do a job and they're concerned about this, then you're like, oh, I need curriculum. I need to make sure that they can do this. I need to make sure that they know their ABCs. I need to show them at the end of the day craft projects that look like something, or so there's a lot of pressure a lot of times on us, and I feel it too, to be the person who's initiating all the activities all day long. But there's a lot that we can do that still allows for free play. For example, one thing that's really important, and if you study in Europe, they have this thing called play work, this movement, and they're the ones that are responsible for those like adventure playgrounds where kids are like in mud and on tires and whatever. And they have like this whole thing about controlling the environment. So for us, for whether it's an NCS who puts down a soft blanket and toys that are just out of reach for, a baby who's playing on the carpet, or whether it's a preschool nanny who dumps out a whole bunch of dress ups and then just walks away, or how we baby proof an area, or how we get them outside. Structuring the environment that allows for them to play is a big role that we have. And making sure that they have the right kind of toys, like not toys that are going to be just button pushing instant gratification, but blocks and puzzles and tubes and boxes and things that they can use in many different ways, and advocating for that. And then I think the other thing that we can do is to observe and record. So often there's not a lot of impact or not a lot of pressure for us to observe the kids. Like in a preschool, kids would get observations. There would be a structure for that, but for us, not so much. But I think that can be really valuable. If we sit back and watch, we can see amazing patterns start to form, and we can see their behaviors, and then we can go and extend activities from there. So, for example, there's this thing called schema, which is fascinating stuff, which are basically just frameworks for activities that you might do over and over again. So like a kid who's always dumping things off of a bookshelf, they're interested in how the books are falling and what that sounds like, and they're learning from that, right? So then that's annoying, first of all. And second of all, we might, if we are watching a kid, we can also see that they also like to dump over blocks. They like to empty baskets and then fill the baskets. So then we can say, oh, from my observation today, I noticed that your kid's sort of learning this, the lesson of how things empty and fill and the language that goes along with that. So I'm going to create more activities that they can do. We're going to get out, some smaller pieces that we can do this with or whatever. You can also, I think, as a nanny, be, especially if you only have one kid at a time, which a lot of times now that's what's happening, right? You can be, there's plenty of time to be quiet, but also you can sportscast, which is like just basically saying, oh, you're everybody, I think most nannies know what that is, but basically like just the voice in their head, but you're saying it, right? Oh, you're dumping the scarves. Oh, that scarf is pink. Then you can also, with older kids, I think, be asking questions, which is a great way to help them sort of connect the dots and do critical thinking. And with school age kids, that can be really helpful too. Well, why, especially when it gets into those, right now, sibling rivalries, or later when we can play again with friends, those relationships, well, why do you think that she's upset when you made this rule for the game? Or what do you think that feels like when somebody treats you like? You can ask questions and help them draw things from the play. So I think that's mostly our role, is being that support for it.
And I would agree with you on all of those things. And I love that you touched on talking to the parents about this, because, and I had a conversation with one of the students that I'm working with on a more one-on-one level. I had this conversation today that the parents that we're dealing with, yes, they're an expert in their own child. It's their child. They're always going to be an expert in their own child. But as a general rule of thumb, most of our clients are not experts in child development. But we are. Right. If we are trained and educated nannies and have worked towards these things, whether it's self-education or formal education, we are experts in child development. We understand the importance of these things. And so when you brought that up, I was like, yes, exactly. Because we need to talk to parents about the importance of this, not only so they don't think we're slacking off, but so that they understand and are also implementing and supporting that. What are some of the tips that you might have for a nanny out there who says, well, great, but how do I talk to them? And I will tell you, I had a client once who said, I don't believe in free play.
Right.
I'm paying you to interact with my child every minute they are awake.
Right.
I was like, okay.
Well, and you want, I mean, if you love your job, a lot of times you want to be there a lot too. And so it is hard sometimes to advocate for this um, you know, like my 6-year-old who's in kindergarten now, like he is so reliant on me for playing right now because it's just the two of us that I rarely make him do things by himself, to the point where now he doesn't want to do things by himself, which is like the worst thing. Like, it's like, but I love it. But I think, so when it comes to parents, it depends on their temperament and how receptive they are to things. So I think there's a few ways that you can do it. Some of them are more direct, just saying, listen, I went to this class, I heard this talk, I read this article. I feel like we need to allow more time for play. This is what they get out of it. You can just share your information. And I find with parents, oftentimes it's easier to do it in bits and pieces rather than like a long soliloquy, which is hard for me because I like to talk, as you might know. So, but I like train myself a little bit to be like, okay, we're going to do this today because I know that free play is really important, and just try to, you know, I feel like they're stressed out, and I know that play helps minimize stress. So we're going to have some free play today. You can do it if you're if you have a journal and you're journaling, you can include little bits like that in the journal and just give them the small pieces of information. Now, if you have a more direct academic kind of parents, you might want to print out a few articles and just give them to them. Or my bosses and I, from the get-go, one thing that I've done, and I've encouraged them to do it to me too, is we share things via email when we read articles that we like. So I encourage them to send me things when they read something and they're like, oh, this is interesting. And then I feel free to send it to them. So then sending them articles or information when you read it is really super helpful. It's something they can like click on while they're at work and read an article while they're eating a sandwich or whatever. It's right there. If they don't read it, it's not the end of the world, but it doesn't feel so pushy to parents, I think, who don't want to be taught, which some parents do, but some parents don't. The other last thing that I think that's really important is, well, two things, and they go together. One, you have to be on top of it yourself. So you can't just say, I know free play is important, and so that's why you should listen to me, and this is what we need to do. So read a few articles, get some more concrete information about it yourself so that you can share that. And then what I have done with really resistant parents is I create like a 3-ring binder in the kitchen, and I'll start like putting articles in it on all sorts of topics for the kids, for myself, and for the parents. And then I'll leave them out on the counter sometimes, and you'd be surprised. Or sometimes I'll leave them in the bathroom, or like, on like around the house somewhere, just strategically, an article here or there that might, and it depends on the parent. If you have a fluffy, softer parent, you can get things from like Parents Magazine. But if you have a hardcore show me the data stuff, you have to dig a little deeper and find articles that have that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's all in the approach. And I think it's important when you approach parents and you're advocating for things, that you're advocating for things that you yourself implement as well. Mm-hmm. So saying, I found this works when I have them during the day. I feel like maybe, you might want to try it on the weekend and see if it works for you too. And we can discuss, what's best. If you're not doing it yourself, advocating for it is not going to work. So.
I absolutely agree. And you brought up several things that are really, key to this. And the thing that came to mind for me while listening to this was, I read a book several years ago called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the points in there is that when there's something of value that you want someone else to do or to accept or to understand, showing them how it benefits them or someone that's important to them, like their children, is oftentimes a very effective way to do it. And you you gave several examples of ways to do that. So I think that's fantastic. We've already covered a ton of stuff. Is there anything else that you want to share with our audience?
I did just think, because you just said that, here's a bonus of COVID and having parents work from home. So the work from home, it is hard. Parents come in, they change things, they change the dynamic, they make rules that you don't necessarily agree with and you have to abide, like, oh, whatever. But the other bonus part of it is they get to see you do your thing. So a great thing to do is to show them what you do works. So then it makes it much easier to advocate for those things. So being able to say to the kids, okay, it's free play time, in your nice loud voice, not too loud to interrupt a conference call, but loud enough you can be heard. It's important for your brain, kids, for you guys to play by yourselves for half an hour. I'm going to go do the dishes. You guys go play. And then see what happens. And then later at the end of the day, be like, oh yeah, we tried some free play. It was great. I got to get the dishes done. And the kids created this amazing game and used their creative skills. And mom and dad are like, oh yeah, I saw that today. Like, I heard you do that with the kids. So that's another way of looking at that. That it just struck me when you said that, like, yeah, that's an added bonus. I mean, it doesn't always work, but
It works all the time, but I think it's a great idea. And I love your attitude about finding some positives in the middle of COVID.
well, we have to try, right?
I know. That's what prompted all those flowers last spring.
Yeah, exactly.
And I do want to share with everybody who might be watching this and seeing this and might have missed it, is we had Wendy Shardema on recently, who did a whole thing about navigating work-at-home parents, and it was really good. So there might be some tips in there that would dovetail nicely in with this information. And I'll tell you kind of at the end where you can find all that. But you have shared some really, as always, amazing takeaways. You always bring in an insight that reminds me of what I know or gives me a few more tips, because babies are my jam. So I really appreciate that, Sue. And I know that everybody who's watching appreciates it as well. So thank you for joining us. It's always an honor to have you and to benefit from all your insight and knowledge.
Well, thank you. And thanks for doing this. It's such a great thing to be able to learn a little. And you're right. It's like it reminds you of stuff you already knew or makes you think about things in a different way. It's nice every Sunday night to be able to, dial up some inspiration for the upcoming week. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We're having a lot of fun with this, and have gotten tons of good feedback. Initially, I thought it was going to be something maybe we were going to be doing for 3 or 4 months. And yeah, we're coming up on almost a year now. We've been
wow. So that's fantastic.
It's a lot of fun. And I love getting to have people like you come back on, because I know you're a wealth of knowledge and we can't cover it all, in 30 minutes. So it's a great resource. So thank you to our audience also for joining us tonight. If you have questions about this topic or anything related to play, or frankly, almost anything else in the nanny world, put them in the feed and tag Sue or tag Newborn Care Solutions, and we'll make sure that you get an answer. And if you're watching this on replay and you want to catch any of our past segments, you can pop over to newborncaresolutions.com and click on the education tab, or you can now find us on YouTube. So go to YouTube and search Newborn Care Solutions. All of our Real Talk episodes, as long as some other content, is up on YouTube as well now. So thanks for joining us, everyone, and have a great evening.
Thanks.
Bye.